This is Dietitians Who Lift, a podcast all about registered dietitians, nutrition, and strength training. In this episode, Summer the dietitian interviews bariatric sports dietitian Kim Tirapelle from Active Bariatric.
Hey, Kim. Thanks for being here. My name is Summer. I'm a registered dietitian, and this is Dietitians Who Lift. And I'm so excited that you are my very first guest on this brand new podcast because I got to be a guest on your podcast, and I very much enjoyed my time with you. And you asked me so many really great questions, but I don't think I know enough about you. So I'm so glad that you're here. Tell everybody who you are and what you do.
Thank you. Well, I'm so honored to be here, and certainly for your first episode. I'm excited. This is a great kind of community that I think you're going to be building too amongst dietitians who lift. So I'm excited to be here. But yeah, I'm a registered dietitian as well. I've been practicing for 18 years, and I actually specialize in bariatric nutrition with an emphasis in sports nutrition. So I help folks that have had bariatric surgery who have gone through, that weight loss phase and now are wanting to change their body composition. Maybe they want to gain muscle. Maybe they're training for a half marathon or a full marathon. But folks that are, they've really changed their life after bariatric surgery and have all these new exciting fitness and training goals. And it can be really hard to know how to change your nutrition after you've had bariatric surgery specifically because your body's been changed. So I help them to kind of navigate their nutrition to meet their new fitness goals after surgery.
Tell me more about that, because I imagine that your typical bariatric patient feels really secure and well educated in that first year or two post-surgery for the weight loss phase. But I don't know that we know enough as dietitians or get enough training, or even the patients know what to expect year 5, 10, 15. You're not eating that post-bariatric, regular tiny meal pattern anymore. I mean, I work with patients who have regained some weight and they're starting GLP-1 medications post-bariatric surgery. So 5 years out, you've lost the weight, you've maintained it, you're feeling really good, and you decide you want to sign up for a half marathon.
Yeah.
How does just someone's nutrition approach have to change to support that training?
Yeah. Well, first I'll answer your question, which is, I think people do get a basic education, folks that are having bariatric surgery, in terms of nutrition guidelines. But as you mentioned, really those guidelines are generally for the first year or maybe up to 2 years post-op, where they're advised to follow a very kind of cookie cutter 8 to 1,200 calorie meal plan, 60 to 80 grams per day. And as you just mentioned, when they're 5, 10, 15 years post-op, their lives have changed. Their goals have changed. Their eating patterns have changed and grown since that initial post-op phase. And there isn't much education or really follow-up because, of course, clinics have a hard time following people for life, right? Usually a bariatric surgical center will follow people for the first couple years post-op. You'll have that contact with your team. But then thereafter, usually you're discharged back to your primary care. And so if the primary care doesn't have, background or maybe additional staff to help with nutrition, folks really do get kind of lost. And so to answer your second question, which is, what's kind of the mindset is we're changing towards like a fitness or training goal, it's really different. And how I kind of, summarize it to people is we have our bariatric nutrition guidelines and we have sports nutrition guidelines. And at this point in time, currently as we stand today, there's not a lot of research on active bariatric individuals in terms of their nutrition needs. And so I found in all these years in working with folks that they get the surgery and now they're still advised to stay on this very low calorie, protein focused diet, which, okay, that's great for that initial phase. But now when you're moving your body more, you have increased needs for like carbohydrates and, balancing your plate better and just overall increasing fluids and electrolytes and all these things that are going to fuel your body to move. So what I try to help folks with is just kind of navigate, how do we combine these two areas that are individualized for you? Because as you know, when you're working with your folks, nobody's the same, as anyone else. And so we really have to find what works for people in combining those two areas and just applying it towards their goals and adjusting their intake based on what they can tolerate.
Yeah, I know in my experience, by folks who are post-bariatric surgery, I mean, most patients who are in this weight loss phase are a little carb phobic, a little
Right.
nervous about carbohydrates, but especially the bariatric patients, I feel like they are scared sometimes to add back in carbohydrates to their lives, and their surgeon told them not to, or they're still trying to follow that diet that they had at month 9 because that's the one that worked for the
Right.
weight loss, and they think they have to maintain that forever. And so adding back in carbohydrates, I think is probably a big one. And then I know that folks, when it comes to hydration too, right,
Right.
that can be tricky with
Yep.
bariatric surgery because we still advise long term for folks to try to split up their hydration from their solid foods, right? Even
Correct.
5, 10 years post-op. But then if we have an increased fluid need, we're sweating more, we're more active, that can probably be difficult to meet.
Yeah, it is challenging just because specifically with bariatric folks, they often don't tolerate just plain water. Often they tolerate it better if it's flavored or we play around with different temperatures. And then, of course, that requirement of separating food and drink by about 30 to 60 minutes is something that they're advised for life, basically. And so it can be challenging because oftentimes when we have a smaller stomach already now because we've had the surgery, and then we're trying to separate food and drink, it makes it challenging to get in all of these different things that you need, especially then when you have these fitness and training goals, which raises all of those requirements. So it's this kind of it's very challenging. And so it's been an area that I've just been really passionate about because I had a background as an athlete myself and, played sports and, enjoyed lifting and learning all about that. And then when I became a dietitian, my very first job was working in a hospital setting, inpatient, where I worked in the bariatric surgical
Mhm.
floor. And I just found over time that there just wasn't a lot of answers. And like you said, they're kind of provided these same guidelines from the surgery and they're expected to follow that for life, especially the low carb recommendations. And then when we say, hey, you're starting to train for a half marathon or you want to gain some muscle, we need to add in some carbohydrates. It's scary. It really is. Because it's like, am I going to derail everything? How do I do that in a way that feels good for me? So it's hard.
And the fear of regain, I'm
Yes.
sure, is there.
Yes,
I
totally.
imagine that you work with folks a lot about separating their fitness goals from their weight loss goals
Yes.
because
Yes.
I see a lot in my practice that, well, if I work out more, if I do more activity, I'm going to lose more weight or lose weight more quickly or have an easier time keeping this weight off. When actually what I see is that the more active we are, the more hungry we are. And sometimes that can mean we eat more than we really intend to or more than our plan says we should. And that can be scary. And also, if we're truly like new to the gym and we're starting to lift and we are putting on muscle from our low weight post surgery or post initial weight loss and we gain a little bit of weight, how do you counsel patients around that scenario where, okay, the scale said this before, you've been strength training for a year now, you're 10 pounds heavier than your lowest, but now you're strong and we see muscle definition and you have all these new skills in the gym. How do we manage that frustration over the scale?
Yeah. I've really found that moving away from using the scale as the only outcome measure and looking more at body composition just gives us a fuller picture as to what is actually happening in the different compartments in our body. When we look on the scale, it's just a culmination of everything that's in your body, right? At that moment. And so it doesn't tell you that, hey, guess what? Out of those 10 pounds, I've gained 7 or 8 pounds of muscle, which is exactly what folks, hopefully are striving for, right? Because for long
And you're
term,
eating
that's gonna,
carbs.
yeah, you're eating
So you've got
carbs,
some
so you're storing
glycogen.
water.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're eating carbs. Maybe you've added some saltier foods in because you've added in electrolytes to your fluids for your long runs. Maybe you're having a lot of an inflammation because you had a tough workout, and so again, you're storing more water. A lot of those shifts can often be explained by water shifts, etc. But certainly, if it's muscle, that's something we want to celebrate. We want to highlight. So what I have found is hey, when we first get together, when I work with folks one-on-one in my practice at Active Bariatric Nutrition, I really start off with like, what's your main goal right now? Because oftentimes, and this probably happens with you, folks will be like, hey, I am trying to lose weight, but I also want to gain muscle. And so I'll often say, okay, what is our main focus, right? What's our main focus right now? Because we want to try to just, if we can focus on one goal, we can adjust your nutrition for that one goal. And then once you've achieved that, we can focus on something different. But especially for my active folks, I really hone in on the benefits of muscle and gaining muscle and body composition changes rather than just that number on the scale is the only thing that kind of makes or breaks our day. You know what I mean?
I have so many folks who are athletes who are
Yes.
training for things and they're frustrated with the scale, but their training's going really well. Or they're losing weight, but their training is frustrating. And it's a hard conversation sometimes to say these weight loss goals and these performance goals may not get along. And we
Right.
might have to readjust our expectations for one or the other or both. to negotiate kind of where we, like you said, focus on what really matters, I like to have everybody take a step back too and say, okay, what's the long-term goal here? We have a
Yes,
half marathon in 12 weeks, but what are we going to do a year from now?
totally.
Right? Like, are we going to keep running after this race? Or is this just like you want to try to do it and like say you did it and then you're not? That was me. I did a half marathon and I was like, yeah, I would have been real happy to stop running at like mile 8. Like, this is good. I'm having
This
fun.
is
I'm just not
great.
a runner.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here, looking at like my medals on the wall from all the little races I've done. And every single one of them, I remember being halfway through it, being like, gosh, this is terrible. And
Yeah.
now it's like, I'm a strength trainer now. Like, I would rather be strong and, that's just
Yep.
my goal.
Totally.
Maintain my weight loss and have bigger muscles. And so even though those are my kind of overall goals, my long-term goal is to be an athlete forever. And so I don't risk injury. I don't overdo it anymore. I used to really overwork out as part of my weight management strategy was to just exercise the heck out of myself to try to lose more weight. It's been made strength training more fun and more realistic and practical and enjoyable, I think, when you decouple it from the weight goal.
Totally. And I'll just add too, a lot of times when I'm talking with folks, we talk about nutrition periodization, which is your goals and your nutrition are going to change over the course of the year. They shouldn't be the same all year long, unless you're just in a maintenance phase and you're feeling good and you're happy with where you're at. Okay, then that might be a long time frame. But whatever that is for you, it's
Mhm.
okay. We just want to make sure that we're adjusting the nutrition. And like you were saying, like sometimes folks have a weight loss goal and then also in 12 weeks, they want to run this half marathon. And it's like, well, the weight loss goal while trying to fuel optimally for a marathon aren't going to line up, right? Those guidelines are going to be different. And so trying to kind of come to grips with that. And again, going back to what is your ultimate goal right now, in the long term? And then how are we going to get there in these shorter time windows? That's what we need to focus on. And then after the half marathon, if you want to go back to, hey, I'd like to, change my body composition a little bit more, then we can refocus and go, okay, now we can change your nutrition for that goal. So I think, and I'll just add too, I think consistency and just being consistent with whatever that is that you're working towards is such a key piece to all of these things that we're discussing today, because I oftentimes will get folks that, it's like, we want the results tomorrow. And it's like, that's not how this works, especially with gaining muscle and going to the gym and lifting. It takes time and consistency to have your body respond.
And sometimes doing all the things all at once is
Yeah,
going to backfire. It's just you're going to burn out. You're not going to feel good. You're not going to enjoy the training. And that for me is a big component. I have to eat enough to enjoy the training, or I'm not going to want to keep doing the training.
totally.
And that was a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah.
You should
Yeah.
probably eat something before you go for this long run.
Yes. Yeah.
So tell me how you got into this such a niche space. Like, you're not just a sports dietitian, you're not just a bariatric dietitian. How did these two things come together?
Yeah. I'll kind of briefly summarize this. So when I went to school at the University of Illinois and I played soccer, and I remember my junior year feeling terrible, and my coach was like, you should go meet with this dietitian. And I'm like, what's a dietitian? Like, I have no idea even what a dietitian is. And she's like, well, she specializes in sports nutrition, and you go meet with her. She'll talk to you about your intake, and she'll kind of help to point out where are some opportunities that you can, make some changes to have more energy in our training. Because, playing soccer and running and lifting and doing all these things, it's demanding. And so I went and met with her, and I remember thinking, what a cool job. How awesome, right? And how cool to help people fuel to meet whatever these training goals are. So that's kind of what sparked my interest in just becoming a dietitian. I was actually going to school to be a teacher, and I actually taught high school health and PE for a year after graduating college. And then I told my parents, I'm like, I think I want to be a dietitian. And they were like, why don't you finish this degree first? And then if you want to revisit that after you teach a year, so be it. And so I did. I was like, you know what? I want to be a dietitian. So I ended up going back and getting, master's degree in nutrition. And so when I first came out in, clinical setting, I worked inpatient, and like I said, I covered the bariatric floor. And it was very intriguing to me to learn a little bit more about how their body was being changed and, how the nutrition was going to be changed. And over the, next probably 10 years or so, I worked working with inpatient and outpatient bariatric patients. And while I was doing that, I was also the team dietitian here at Fresno State University, where I live, as the team dietitian helping out with all the athletes. And where I kind of found this to overlap was, like, as I mentioned earlier, I started getting so many more questions about, I'm eating 1,200 calories, but I'm trying to run this marathon and I can't do it. And these are people that have had bariatric surgery. And I was like, that's not enough. Knowing sports nutrition guidelines, but also knowing what they're limited to, I was like, well, that's not going to work. We're going to have to figure this out. How do we combine these? So basically over time, in the last 18 years that I had experience with, elite athletes, but also throughout the whole time working with bariatric individuals, I found that we had to merge these two areas and that there was a real hole out there in terms of there's not a lot of folks that have these two particular niche areas, And so I actually left my full-time position in 2022 after having worked in an outpatient bariatric facility to open up my own practice, which is called Active Bariatric Nutrition. And I work with folks individually, as well as I'm developing a group program right now called Bariatric Strong, where I'm going to be helping folks to optimize nutrition for muscle. So it's been a journey, but honestly, this area, I think, kind of overlaps in your area, which is the GLP-1 area, because of course our patients often have bariatric surgery and then have GLP-1, take those. Yeah. And I'm hoping, especially in your program, with more research on these populations, we can learn more about what they need and what they can tolerate and, how to optimally fuel people who are really eating probably less calories than they may need, but how can we optimize that within what they can tolerate? So it's been a great journey. I've enjoyed it.
Tell me more about that transition from a secure, full-time, inpatient facility where you've been there a while. I'm sure you were well loved and really good at your job, to this independent private practice. Like, that sounds so scary to me. I've thought about it so many times. I'm, in a good place now with Vineyard and in a clinic and, doing what I love, but the idea of like working for yourself, but like such a difficult space right now. There are so many people who want to be dietitians in this virtual telehealth social media space. How did you find success in doing that? Was it the niche or was it your experience? Like, how did you get here?
Yeah, I think it's a good question. So I'll first start with just saying, I loved where I worked. I loved my team. I really did. I have nothing but good things to say about it. But what I found that wasn't fulfilling for me was I just felt like I had way too many people in a day where I wasn't really able to actually get into the details, right? It was mostly just kind of general advice, like, okay, here's your plan, see you later. And I just felt like it wasn't very fulfilling to me as a dietitian to just be kind of having people come in and out, in and out. There was some follow-up, but it wasn't really where I felt like I was seeing them to their goal. You know what I mean? And that for me was frustrating. And honestly, I was kind of burning out of just too much load in terms of patient load and as to where I was. And, I think that just happens to be, unfortunately, somewhat of the nature of our current healthcare system, which is maybe there's just not enough resources, or I don't know what the margins have to be, for clinics and things, but it makes it challenging. So I decided that, of course, I discussed with my husband and my family, and of course, I have 3 children and really also wanted to be more present at their things. And when you work a 8:30 to 5 job, you're clocking in and out, and you can't really have much flexibility there to go and, hey, I want to go see my kid's award, or I want to go see my kid play baseball at 2:30 when you're working till 5. It just wasn't why I became a dietitian. And so we talked about it, and basically I ended up leaving in 2022, but we started talking about it really during COVID, like during 2020, when we started doing a lot of this virtual work. And I found that I could still work with people, right? One-on-one, face-to-face, even though we weren't in the same room, we were talking just like we're doing right now. And it ended up being a really cool medium that I think was able now to connect people anywhere. It didn't matter. That allowed me to have a little confidence because I had been doing that then for a year and a half where I was working, to look into how could I open up my own business and platform that would allow me to do virtual services and kind of grow from there. But I think years of experience, I do think the niche, really there's not too many folks out there that specialize in bariatric nutrition and sports nutrition. So that's been, fortunate for me that, I've had a lot of interest because there's just not a lot of help out there. So folks are like, oh my gosh, someone that actually can answer some of these questions. And so that's been, a good thing for me. But let me tell you, it has been a very steep learning curve because as dietitians, we're not trained in marketing, running businesses, platforms such as I've had to learn so much in the last 3 years, and it is not easy. It's been challenging. Resources are available.
I know. I thank goodness for platforms that help me with editing and all of this, because this undertaking of this podcast was a little scary to me because I was like so grateful for the technology. I can't imagine. I mean, the people who were doing these podcasts and these YouTubes and stuff like 10 years ago, your private practice, how do you fit in your own fitness time? How do you find time to lift? What's your strategy there?
Yeah. So I'm a morning person. I'd rather, because as you have kids too. It's like once the day gets going, that's it. I'm working, I'm running kids to practices. I have 3 kids in sports, all in different places at all different times. And so it's a lot, but I have found for me, in terms of prioritizing my fitness, number one, it just helps me be a better person and mom and wife and, dietitian, because
Mhm.
if I don't prioritize myself, then I mean, I've been there. I've been in a place where I felt like I was giving all my energy and time and everything to everything else, and kind of was then feeling not great about myself, and didn't feel like I was getting the things that made me feel good. You know what I mean? So I find that working out first thing in the morning, my husband and I, and actually my oldest son, who is in high school now, who he lifts, we lift 4 times a week in the morning before he goes to school. And then it's after I drop off my younger 2 at school, I go get my lift in for an hour, and then I'm home showering, and we're starting our day by, 9 or 10. So that's, I will say again, one of the very fortunate benefits of owning my own practice is that I can, make those hours work with the lift. But even when I was in the inpatient facility that I was at, an outpatient facility, I found that working out first thing in the morning, and sometimes that meant getting up at 4:30 or 5 because I had to be up before everyone else.
Yep.
That was the only time that worked. Yeah. And it's like, shoot, okay. And once you kind of, it sucks in the beginning because you're like, this sucks getting up at 4 in the morning. I'm exhausted. But once I would do it and I actually had more energy on the days that I did work out versus the ones I didn't. I felt worse. So it was just
The
something.
days I
Yeah.
forget to set my alarm, or I don't get up, or like something happens where I don't get that morning workout,
Yes.
the kids are late for school. I am all discombobulated with my day. I feel like I'm dragging for the rest of the day. Like my morning workout has really served me really well when, and I get the like mom guilt too, that like my kids are in school now most of the time. When they're home, I should be around, right? As how I feel. I
Yes.
want to be around. I want to be present. And, I have a treadmill here in my office. I could close the door and do something in the afternoon. We have weights in the garage. I could close the door and do something in the garage. That felt like unsustainable. And my little guy is wild, full of energy. We're starting sports. He's playing soccer now. We've done baseball, we've done gymnastics. And it's like these evening times are when all those things happen.
Totally.
And my kids are in 2 different schools, so I do the car line thing. So it's just the idea of doing an afternoon workout just never happens. And especially since I've been working from home, and even actually when I was working in the hospital, we had a gym on site. And I always said to myself, I'm going to go in the middle of the day. I'm going to go on my lunch break. Or
Right.
even now, I'm like, I'm going to do it at lunch hour. You get stuck in a patient's room, you get stuck on the phone, you feel like you're behind on your charting, and it just doesn't happen consistently.
Totally.
So my early mornings too have been my like go-to training time. I'm really excited though, because my older daughter is finally old enough to come with me as my guest to the big gym that I go to. And she asked to learn how to be a power lifter.
Okay.
And I think she's going to be fantastic at it.
I love it.
She goes, but I don't want you to teach me.
Okay. You're like, okay.
So I've gotten her connected with my strength coach. Bless his heart, this little 20-something-year-old dude that
Yeah.
just happened to be my trainer. Now he's my daughter's trainer, and they connect once a week, and he's teaching her the basics, right? A hinge, a squat, a plank. But more than anything, it's just getting her comfortable
Totally.
in the gym and like seeing that all these other people are just a bunch of other regular people. And like, it's not a scary place. It's not something that she can't do. She's like feeling really strong, and
Yeah.
it's been really fun. So I'm looking forward to when my son is also older and we could do the family trip to the gym.
Yes.
And so we're not sacrificing that mom time and kid time, it could be workout time. I'm really looking
Totally.
forward to that.
It's fun. It is fun. And I'll just say with my oldest, my husband, so my husband was a wrestler. My son, both of my boys wrestle, play baseball, football. And my oldest is 15. He's a freshman in high school. And our goal this year has been to increase, muscle strength, power, etc. So that, each year therefore, moving forward, he's building that. And it's been really cool to, from the nutrition standpoint, kind of sit down and talk to him, especially with wrestling, of course, because you can imagine there's real specific nutrition guidelines for like making weight and staying healthy within your weight class, and being the strongest that you can be at that weight class. And so it's been really cool to bridge that with him because he's old enough now. He's 15, so he knows that nutrition's important and that it's helpful for him. He of course enjoys eating, and we can talk about that. And of course he'll be like, oh gosh, mom, please don't talk about carbohydrates around my friends. And I'm like, I'm sorry, like, because I'm like, babe, make sure you're getting your carbs in for the workout. And he's like, oh my gosh, mom. And I'm like, do you have your protein shake for post workout? He's like, please make it stop. But I gotta say that,
Lucky though to have a sports
I mean,
dietitian mom.
it's been,
I
yeah.
mean, the advantage there.
Yeah, I mean, it's been good in that, now it's just part of our normal family discussion. And I have a 9-year-old daughter, and then my middle son is 12, and he's, is a boy. And we just we talk about it in a positive way. How can it help our body? We don't talk about cutting things I'm really looking forward to this podcast because I can't wait to hear from other dietitians as to how they talk about nutrition with their kids, you know what I mean, and their family, because it can be this of course, when people know you're a dietitian, they want, oh, what should I be eating or not eating, right? And I've always come from the mindset of like, what can we do to just make things better? Not like, where do we have to cut things out, or, you can't ever have soda, or, because that's not sustainable. And I feel like that's
What can we
gotten
add?
us, yeah, and that's kind of gotten us to where we are in our society in general, which is always about cutting, and that unhealthful relationship with food. It's just been, I hear my daughter's 9, and she'll be like, oh, this girl said I shouldn't eat that because I'll get fat. And I'm like, what? I don't even like that word, but I'm just like, what? And you just kind of go, they're 9 and they're already having these kinds of discussions. And you're just like, oh my gosh. So for me as a dietitian, what's been great about the lifting with my son is kind of adding that discussion to our overall family talk about how do we use nutrition to help us gain muscle and be healthy in general, and translating that down to my younger kids as well. So it's been a process, but I'm excited for you and your daughter. I love seeing all the videos and the posts. That's so exciting.
She's like, just leave me with the coach.
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay,
Yeah.
I'll go. I already lifted today. I guess I'll go walk on the treadmill while
Yeah. Yeah.
and I was just really proud of her because she's not been an athletic kid. And
Right.
as an athlete, I'm an athlete. I've always been an athlete, even when I was like younger, and I played basketball and I figure skated and I did
Oh, that's
dance. I did
awesome.
all the things.
Yeah.
And I threw the shot put in high school.
I
That was
love
fun.
that.
But I see her not into sports, right? Just really not. She's into gaming and art and comic books, and she's just not a sporty girl, but she's strong and powerful, and like she's gonna be a giant, tall person. And it's like, I want her to see herself as a strong person, because I know, and this is terrible. I don't know if this is terrible, if it's just realistic. Her father struggles with his weight. I've struggled with my weight my whole life. It's in our genes. We are a large people.
Sure.
Just my
Sure.
family, the women in my family are larger women. And I want her to not struggle in the way that I did with my size, because I always felt like it was a problem. And I want her to see whatever size she ends up being as strong and capable and
Yes.
mobile and doing the health promoting behaviors, even if the size or the shape or the number ends up being whatever it ends up being, right?
Right.
Like, we don't want to
Totally.
focus on that.
Right.
So I was really thrilled when she was like, she said she saw some powerlifting teenagers on YouTube Shorts.
I love it.
And I swear it must be because we have the connected Google accounts on the family plan or something, that my algorithm is showing her an algorithm. I don't know. That's what I think. But she's like, those girls look cool. I'm like, those are cool girls. Like, yeah, let's go lift some weights. I'm thrilled for her. But
I
I
think
don't want to,
that's, yeah, go
I
ahead.
can't tell her how excited I am, because if I
Yeah.
tell her how excited I am, she'll be like, I'm not doing it
All
anymore.
right, mom, no, this is not cool. We can't talk about it. No.
She
And I
calls me
think,
cringe.
oh my gosh, yes, I get that too. I get that often. But you know what I think it's cool too is that hopefully we're in a place now also with just women in general really grasping strength training and the importance of it. And of course, now we're even getting into more research into perimenopause and menopause and the benefits of strength training for women. And of course, it's important for men as well. But all the research that's out there usually is on men, right? The majority of it. So I think it's an exciting time because this information hopefully is going to trickle down to our young ladies so that they can start it at an earlier age. Hey, I want to be strong and powerful and I want to have good mobility for life and, be able to do whatever that is that I want to do with my life. And being strong and capable are awesome goals to have. Whereas in the past, it was always about, just hitting some number on a scale or that thin look was like, the look, I guess you can call it. I feel like now we're getting to a place, hopefully, and hopefully more so moving forward, where strong and capable and being, confident and powerful are awesome things for women to achieve and aim for. And I really hope that through this podcast and through others that we can really emphasize the importance of lifting and how that can play a role and not just only doing cardio, right? Like strength training is so critical, for us to be healthy for life, for lifelong.
So I feel like our audience here on this podcast is going to be a mix, right, of our patient population of people who are looking for nutrition and strength and fitness information, and then also dietitians. So I want to hear your two biggest pieces of advice that you would give to your general patient population, bariatric athletes. What is that one big piece of advice that you give them? And then we'll do also for dietitians. So what is it for your patient population?
Well, I think for my population, because the focus has, of course, been on this weight loss, right? And having the surgery and getting to a healthier overall weight and reducing comorbidities that maybe they've struggled with, for their life or whatever it might be. My biggest advice is just finding something that you enjoy and being consistent with it. Because again, my folks are coming out of their body is changing and it's like almost like starting over, right? They really have to relearn, new things that they can do, or maybe new things they've never been able to or weren't interested in before, but now they can do. And so I don't ever say like you have to strength train like as your only thing, but I do emphasize it as, hey, as part of this journey, I know initially you were probably told a lot to get your steps in and stay active, but as now that you've kind of had that as initial rapid weight loss phase and we've gotten through that, now let's get back into the focus of how do we get stronger, improve our body composition through muscle gaining, and just being consistent with whatever that routine is and what you're able to tolerate. Let's start there. And then we can always change it down the road and you can add days or, you know what I mean? You can still do some cardio and add in the lifting. But my biggest advice is find something you enjoy, be consistent with it, and we can always make changes moving forward based on what your goals are.
I love that. Okay. So for our dietitian listeners, what is your biggest piece of advice for dietitians to be better dietitians for their clients? Like, how can we as a profession improve? What's your biggest tip? Like, what's that one thing that you wish we could help everyone improve with?
I mean, just right off the top of my head, I would say keep an open mind. And you don't really know where your journey is going to take you. I didn't know when I first came out as a dietitian, I was going to only do sports nutrition. But of course, where I lived, that wasn't available right away. It was, clinical positions only. And I thought, oh gosh, I'm going to be a clinical dietitian. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just wasn't what I thought I was going to do. Right. And I ended up in multiple positions over my career here, but a lot of it being a lot of clinical and being able to keep that open mind as to incorporating things like the sports nutrition when I could and volunteering. And then I ended up being the dietitian there at Fresno State, having an open mind just to know that your journey is going to take you in different places. All of the experiences you're having, even if it's not like fulfilling you and you're not like, this is my dream job, it is making you a better dietitian, right? Because you're having experiences with these different populations and you are learning as you are going to work each day. It may not be your favorite thing, but you are learning. And those things ultimately, I think, will help you to get to wherever that might be that you want to aim for, and maybe it's a different area of nutrition. But I kind of wish someone had told me that, because when I was in my internship, it was kind of like, well, here's the jobs that are here. They're all clinical. So that's really your option. And I felt very pigeonholed, like, oh gosh, So then I reached out to a couple sports dietitians. They're like, why don't you just go over to Fresno State and ask if you can help? And I was like, what? Can you help the local high schools? So I started speaking at the local high school teams and just volunteering. Like literally, I did this all for free initially, like, please just let me come talk and get some experience, And I just found that over time, all of those experiences eventually got me to where I am today. And I'm so happy with where I am today. But to summarize, keep an open mind. Everything that you're doing is helping you to become a better dietitian in the end, and take those experiences and use them.
I love that. Thank you so much for being here today. I know you're so busy. You have all these kids and these workouts and these sports and these clients and this private practice. Tell me a little bit about how people can find you online and reach out with you to work with you before we go.
Sure. Well, I'm on social media. So I have Instagram, Active Bariatric. So my business is called Active Bariatric Nutrition, but on social media, you can find me on Instagram, Active Bariatric. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok. I'm on YouTube. I do have a podcast also called the Active Bariatric Nutrition Podcast, where I had someone like you come on, where we get to talk about, nutrition for optimizing, fitness and training goals. But I bring in different healthcare providers, I bring in researchers, I bring in clients, and we, share our experiences because, like I said, in my field, there's not a ton of, information out there. So that podcast has been really cool. And then my website is activebariatricnutrition.com, where you can learn more about my services. But I am just about to launch a really cool program I've been working on. I'm super excited about it, kind of like a passion project that I've had for a while and wanting to do this to be able to work with more folks. It's called Bariatric Strong. It's going to be a 6-week online program where I help bariatric individuals optimize their nutrition to help them with muscle gaining. So I'm excited about that. If you want to learn more about that, you can just go to my bio in my Instagram and click on it, and it'll take you right to the program page so you can learn more about it.
Awesome. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being my first guest. I hope that this was helpful to everyone and you took something away from this episode. If you'd like to be a guest and you're a registered dietitian, please join our Facebook group. It's called Dietitians Who Lift. It's a private community of dietitians who lift, and it's really cool how many of us there are out there, and I can't wait to connect with everyone in future episodes. So thanks again, Kim, for being here. This was great.
Thank you.
I'll see you around.
Okay, take care. Thank you.